Welcome to episode 4 of the Zilliqa Observer. I'm Chase Raz. Time flies when you're having fun, and I cannot believe we're already 4 episodes in under a month. The original idea was to do 12 episodes a year, but apparently when we get going, we get going. I'll be speaking with Colin Miles today, the Chief Commercial Officer and co-CEO of Zilliqa. Talk about getting going, am I right? I don't want to keep you waiting anymore, so here we go. Joining me today is Colin Miles. Colin, you are well, first of all, let me say you're the Chief Commercial Officer and co-CEO of Zilliqa, right? Is that, did I get the title right?
Yeah, that's the full thing.
Wonderful. Well, hi, Colin. How are you today?
Great. It's another exciting day in our world. It's changing so rapidly, and there's so many things coming in on our emails and on our messages and on our telegrams and on our Twitter. It's just the most exciting buzz you can possibly have.
I want to talk about all of that buzz, but first I want to let people know that you are a marketing professional with a history in mobile advertising, audience interaction, professional certifications. That's near and dear to my heart, something I do outside of here, digital media, community building. And a lot of this goes all the way back to the first .com boom. What about that intro is correct and what's incorrect?
Oh, it's pretty good. You've covered almost everything apart from the tougher entrepreneurial moments, which you go through when you've set up probably 5 different businesses and had 2 exits.
If you set up 5 businesses and had 2, you're doing well. So, right. I look at your LinkedIn and I love it how positive you are about some of those. I just don't list mine. You're positive about it, and I love the depth of background that you offer, because I found myself, more than most people I've ever interviewed, having to click show more. And the compliment to that is I've never wanted to click show more so much in my life before. So I maybe it's because, as I talk, my day job as a professor of digital marketing, but really fascinating stuff. Thank you again for coming. I'm so interested to pick your brain and see what's going on with Zilliqa. Let's put all of that aside. Who are you, Colin, as a human being? If we met on the street and we wanted nothing to do with work right now, what would we talk about? What would we hang out and do? Who are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sports driven. I would say I've spent most of my life playing sports of one type or another. I'm a white collar boxing champion, so boxing is something I love and has kept me very fit previously. And I think that in terms of my competitive spirit, that comes out in all of the sports that I've participated. And I've always wanted to be team captain, so that's probably a good metaphor for where we are.
That's great. You do bring that into business, don't you?
Yeah, it's competitive, but we're in a different kind of culture. The millennial culture is a very different one. So you have to be understanding and listening a lot more than shouting.
Yeah, much more cooperative rather than combative, I would say. And so sport and business, they seem to be 2 central themes. It almost seems like if we were hanging out personally, getting to know you a little bit and knowing myself, you and I probably would devolve to talking about business, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we get the beers out. We talk sports, we talk business, we talk about some of the great wins we've seen in the different eras, whether it's .com or mobile or now blockchain. We'd really get into it.
Good. I'm glad to have somebody to talk to while we're doing that, because a lot of people keep telling me, quit talking about business, and it's like, it's who I am. It's not just the day job, it's who I am. So thank you for sharing that with me. I found something interesting that you said before, and you mentioned that your first introduction to blockchain was, I believe, at a conference. You said walking past an ATM, a Bitcoin ATM, and you decided, why not? Let me just put, I think you said $50 in or something like that.
That's right.
How has that experience evolved over time? Did you keep that Bitcoin? Should I be asking you for a loan right now? Right? Like, it's 50 something thousand right now. Did you keep that Bitcoin? What did you do? What were the steps after that led you, if you will, not away from marketing, but towards marketing in a particular niche? Whereas before, it looks like you were very heavy into mobile advertising.
Yeah, so the Bitcoin moment was interesting because I got a piece of paper which spat out the machine, and I was like, "What do you do with that?" And he said, "Oh, you have to set up a wallet online, go to this.com and so on." And
You
I
were
found it,
thinking confetti fun paper.
yeah, doesn't make any sense. I mean, I understood QR codes at the time because I was
Right.
in mobile, but that went into the wallet on blockchain.com. And then I thought, well, this is interesting, but I can't seem to spend it anywhere. I was supposed to get it so I could buy coffee. That was the whole point, to have this digital money, new
Yeah.
digital money. Very exciting. Yes, thanks. So it kind of went away. And then I looked again a couple of years later, and my $50 was 480 something. And I was like, what happened?
Nice.
Don't really get that. I'm not sure what that means. And managed to reach out to a couple of people in the community who, really crypto anarchists, which they're the most entertaining people to talk to, period. And they really shocked me with the ideas of disruption for economy, for business, for entrepreneurialism. All these things were just, really out there. And I was trying to countenance it and still think about how to use this Bitcoin effectively. And a friend of mine had created a point of sale platform. So it was called Coin of Sale. So the local coffee shop could accept Bitcoin. And he would show me how it worked. And then he would wait 20 minutes until the payment cleared. And I was thinking, well, it's got some way to go, but at least you paid for the coffee. So fantastic. And then, of course, some of the hype gathered speed. I did more research and started to buy more Bitcoin and started to preach to my colleagues in the mobile business that this is a really great thing to get involved with. I think all the way up until around about 6,000 US was pretty much where I was buying up until telling my colleagues to buy. So I felt vindicated that certainly I'd made the right choice, and I'd given them good advice.
Well, it sounds like you made the right choice, and blockchain in general seems to have been knocking at your door multiple times and trying to get you to come over. I think a lot of us share that story from the business side, and I see not only because you're the chief commercial officer and co-CEO, but you're wearing your Zilliqa shirt. It's making me very happy. I was thinking about wearing that exact shirt. Milan sent one to me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wear it. And I thought, no, no, I'm not. So not today. And I'm very glad I'm not today, because frankly, it looks better on you than it looks on me. But what brought you to Zilliqa? What was that transition?
I had a short stint in London. I spent a year there trying to build the mobile business at a time when Brexit became a major issue. So it was an interesting year, but it wasn't very productive, apart from the fact that I did those two online courses, one Oxford University and one with University Berkeley. So
yeah,
that really gave me the academic surety that I knew I was in the right business, the right industry. But more than that, that this could change everything for humanity, full stop. And that was something I got very excited about. And I knew a friend in Singapore who was starting his own business in basically DID, self-sovereign identity and certification. And he said, hey, you're coming back to Singapore, and why not invest in my business and let's see where we can take it. And so I did that, and I joined him for a year as a director and put in some sweat equity as well. And he's built a great product, and I think it's useful because of the COVID situation. He's delivering those health certs, which are now a government standard in Singapore.
Good.
So everyone can hopefully travel when they have the vaccination and the test. And at that moment, someone from the headhunting company that Zilliqa had employed said, would you be interested in a position as head of marketing for a blockchain? And I was thinking, okay, that is something that may enable me to get on the global stage. So it was great to work in the confines of RCN, but it was more exciting for me to think about the potential for blockchain, how huge the impact is on business and obviously the way humans interact with one another. And here was actually just an amazing platform to do that. And I think, as I said in my blog, right place, right time, and right blockchain.
I absolutely love that you're bringing in the concept of it can change the world. And we see that in a lot of startups, not just blockchain. And so, from a business point of view, I actually had a dream about one of my former companies, not my company, but a company I worked for. And I can imagine us sitting at the table today doing this exploratory conversation and everyone around me rolling their eyes and going, oh God, Chase is going to, he's going to hang out with this guy while he's in town and they're going to go grab beers and talk about changing the world. But I want you to keep that in the back of your mind with the context of everything we're talking about, because I'm going to transition now to some of those business-oriented questions to try to dig into the concept of how do we use this? How do we deploy everything you just said? The place I'll start is recently, I try not to, date the show too much and talk about too many current events, but it's topical right now. Recently, Colin, you and a few others from Zilliqa have been, a few other folks have been touting this idea that I believe there are two American partners that are going to be announced pretty soon. Look, we're not actually at that private table behind the scenes with an NDA, so I'm not going to press you for details on that. But I am curious, what should we be expecting in terms of these future announcements, especially US, which so many people are looking at right now, with Zilliqa not having too strong of a presence here, quite frankly? What should we be looking for? Because I think a lot of businesses right now, if I'm going to really just direct shoot it, I'm not sure a lot of businesses are buying it. I'm not sure a lot of businesses are buying into the concept that you and I share of this. And they might even be wondering, is this just more of the same? Are we talking about just a couple more independent artists coming and minting some NFTs? Or are we looking at, something more in the business space?
Yeah, we've had some flirtation with enterprise selling and trying to promote the platform as a solution for business-to-business communication and so on. Certainly in the banking world, there's a lot of conversations about how to do that. It's a bit early still, I think, for us to be selling it as a packaged product. So everything has to be custom built. So we're going to explore the market still quite cautiously and slowly. The American thrust, as it were, still needs to be first on the exchanges. So we need to get, much bigger impact with the exchanges there in the US. And then try and find a kind of signature partner who has widespread adoption already, and then provide them with some kind of tokenization logic which helps drive their business further. So we have to look at how these use cases are timely and how they are easy to adopt, rather than try and force our technology on institutions that might otherwise have different options or might not be that interested or just don't quite get it. So
or the classic could just get by with a database and don't need, the immutability and other factors.
So we're more still focusing on consumer adoption at this point, and then I think the bigger projects will come after that.
Okay, so when you mentioned exchanges in there, and I think we're all expecting some more exchanges, right? That's just, again, I'm not really going to press you on any details there. I know that's an interest in the blockchain community, but from a business point of view, it's the idea of, we know more exchanges are coming, period, full stop, right? That's going to be the state of what it is. If it happens to be my favorite exchange or somebody else's, flip a coin, right? Whichever announcement happens at what time. But are we talking about some announcements coming? Is there a possibility of some announcements coming where we're looking more at these business partners rather than exchanges? Some of those, like you mentioned, going after this, what's the B2B use case that we can partner with somebody who has existing business and help provide something for their operations? Is there anything like that we can be expecting in the near future?
Yeah, so we've had some interesting conversations, again, around the securitization of services. So there are some very interesting projects in America that have a tokenization of securities in play, and we would like to do a kind of partnership with those folks, bring their securities to Asia, and then we can in turn provide our services to them and with them to America.
Anything for the EU or North America in general of existing businesses that would stay on those continents, North America or Europe?
Yeah, that's the next step. I mean, we need to recognize that we are positioning as the gateway to Asia for those blockchain-friendly companies that have already launched services in the US and Europe. So that's still our start point, but there's nothing stopping us taking unique services like social pay to the USA.
And that's a good point of bringing different services to different markets, because the gateway to Asia is a very important concept with Zilliqa. But also in the past, I know that you've mentioned in the past that Zilliqa should be a top 10 network, right? It should be a top 10 blockchain. So just directly going to it, Why do you believe at this time that Zilliqa isn't a top 10? We're, typically sitting somewhere just under 50 in the 50 to 55 range. What's the disconnect between potential and reality?
Well, it's obviously from the inside, we have our own worldview and wondering about what are the buttons we need to press to get up there with other people who've made it so far. We have also external narratives from the community that are presenting about Zilliqa's marketing impact, for example, and also comparing the amount of transactions on the chain to some of those blockchains that have massive valuations, and also blockchains which don't even have smart contracts live and still have huge valuations, and also those that are layer 2 and they're still kind of relying on Ethereum. It's hard to be saying it's one thing, that there is a silver bullet we can fire to get us up there. We are doing a combination of things. Obviously, we're improving our communications, being out there as much as possible. We're open to any kind of YouTube appearance and really trying to get on and explain what Zilliqa is about. We have a mission to enable anyone with a phone to use blockchain services, hopefully for fintech, open finance as we call it, because that will drive a lot of engagement and a lot of revenue through the system. We've got multiple projects in that direction. And I think that we also have some fairly high-profile launches. Today we announced the X Academy partnership, which is going to bring a lot of YouTube influencers.
A lot of YouTube influencers.
Driving token transactions, incentivizing people to watch and share and learn about how to be a communicator on YouTube. We have obviously UFFS, which is a fantasy sports play, which is going to be really interesting for North America. They have a focus on NHL, and I think that's going to increase dramatically as they go live in the next month or so. So we're trying to add all of these elements simultaneously. We have, hardcore open finance platform, which does great things. We have obviously our DeFi, our ZilSwap platform, which has grown relatively quickly in recent weeks with the swap token. I saw your how-to video, which was great. We appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Thank you.
Yeah, and this obviously is something we think can grow really big. Obviously, the leaders are multi-billion dollars total value locked at the moment, and we're just a pinprick in that number. But we can absolutely build it up to maybe, let's say, $1 billion by the end of the year. So it's going to take, again, a few months, and people do need to be patient. But I think we have all of the right ammunition to fire to get us there.
I've not been shy about the prediction, not from a holder perspective, not from a trader perspective, but from my perspective, that in cryptocurrencies, blockchains, I'm really focusing on the blockchain side, that within a couple of years, by 2024, 2025 timeframe, there will be multiple $100 billion plus layer ones. Of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum are there now, but I really think that most of the top 10, not all, but most of the top 10 will be filled, because when you compare to company valuations to what these blockchains, including Zilliqa, are doing, you're somewhere between a company and an economy. Right. So when I heard Bitcoin, I haven't fact checked this, but I heard the other day that Bitcoin finally surpassed, I think it was like the 6th or 7th largest economy globally. And so when you hear those things, I do have a question about how Zilliqa can compete. There's this focus on being a gateway to Asia. There's a focus on open finance, or as the Ethereum world has kind of popularized DeFi, decentralized finance. Same thing. How can Zilliqa compete against some of these higher value, even if they're not necessarily doing anything? The Cardano, the Polkadot, Binance Smart Chain is one it's got to be a love-hate behind the scenes B2B of you're working with Binance, but then they're doing the same things you're doing. And this is a two-parter, because is it a position of how do we compete? How do we position ourselves? Or something else I floated out there that I'd love your input on. Is it time? Is it possible? Is it realistic that the crypto space goes into consolidation and we look at mergers, acquisitions, or partnerships?
Yeah, from a macro perspective, it's interesting to see how the word interoperability has come into play quite often. We ourselves are working on several multi-chain integrations, several multi-chain projects And I had this discussion yesterday with a very senior blockchain leader in Singapore, and trying to work out.
That tells me I'm asking the right question.
Yeah, one chain to rule them all, or can everyone build a much bigger market collectively? That is a very important question, one you would have in any venture capital discussion. What's going to make you the number one destination for your service, right? So you have to balance that with the change in culture of decentralization. It's something where you can't say, I believe in decentralization, and then you want to close everyone in a walled garden. That doesn't really work for me. So my belief is, for example, let's take the Human Token Project, which is quite interesting out of California there, the H-Capture guys who've just grown so dramatically against the Google service in the recent months. They're processing hundreds of millions of transactions. They are working with 3 blockchains at the moment, Polkadot, Solana, and obviously Zilliqa. And what happens is all of those transactions get handled. They get spread. They get shared across networks which can compute the fastest or process the fastest. So it's not about blocking or controlling access. It's actually about proving that your technology is stronger, faster, better. And the AI behind the logic pushes the transactions into the blockchain, which is the most efficient. So it's kind of a different way of doing business. But if you really believe in your tech and believe in your product, then you absolutely back it to take the transactions from that sort of service.
That makes me think of something I've wanted to ask you about. Why public blockchains? Microsoft, IBM, others have large private blockchains that can be supported. What is it for business? Because in business, third party tends to be enough. It's enough for my accounting. It's enough for my financial regulation. It's enough for verifying who wins a sweepstakes. It's enough for, right, all of these things. What about public blockchains? And you and I are both in, right? We there's no secret there. But what is it about public as opposed to private? Why would I, as a business, which my inclination as a business would be, I already have a silver, gold, whatever level partnership with Microsoft. I already have a partnership with IBM. Why would I not just take my business there? We can still hit consensus. We can still hit immutability. We're just not decentralized. What is the real advantage of a business going decentralized?
Yeah, I think a lot of studies have asked us to contribute on the single biggest sales point. What is the single most important thing about a public blockchain? And I believe that the verifiability and the understanding that it is open for all to check and cross-check is a fundamental trust layer that you absolutely have to have. If there's anything behind the scenes, if there's anything privately controlled, if there's anything that individuals could actually manipulate in some way, then you're always potentially at risk. But in a public blockchain where everything is open, the basic facts of the transaction are clear, confirmed, and immutable. And certainly on Zilliqa, which has a tremendous security level, we can't be hard forked. We can't be broken as such. And I think that that gives a certain level of confidence beyond any other public blockchain. So we would provide that, sales pitch to anyone to say that it's as good as a private blockchain, but better because the public actually believes what you're posting. And no one can see it. I mean, it's encrypted, right? No one's looking into the transaction itself. They're just logging certain amounts of data about what's going where. There's no information that's being released or is hackable in any way, shape, or form. So it's a little bit of an education. You have to kind of explain it, but if you're an evangelist for a public blockchain, you have to really back it.
That I know that has to be a hard sell, because look, sitting in meetings where I'm explaining multiple linear regression and linear programming to folks in the logistics or explaining some other thing, it's a hard sell in business because we're all focused on the job we're doing. And so when we cross disciplines and we get into something heavily technical or heavily analytical, if that's not what you already do, the sell is tough. So I can imagine you have a tough time with that particular question, not because it's hard to answer, but because not to turn this and focus on me, but I want to have perspective. I'm so into this that I'm doing a podcast on it. And when you give me that
Yeah.
answer, the reptilian, and I'm gonna be mean to business people here, the reptilian business part of my brain in the back is going, I don't I don't care if it's public. I don't care if, right. I just want to process somebody's account. I just want to process somebody's whatever. And it is a hard sell, but in fairness, obviously I believe in the statement you're making. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have asked you to be here. But I just want to acknowledge for a moment how hard of a sell that is. Do you ever find yourself wanting to, after a meeting, do you go decompress and want to just bang your head against the wall and go, why don't people get this?
Yeah, I think you get used to it after a while. You have to have incredibly thick skin to be in this game at the moment, because there's a lot of stuff flying around which is kind of creating confusion and chaos and one-upmanship and all that kind of stuff. If you're a true believer in blockchain and public blockchain, and you've bought into Bitcoin, you understand the rationale behind that. And if you take that to a business context, then you have to understand that the network effect of a public blockchain can give you lots of additional benefits, which are beyond your closeted walled garden. So it's an education, yes, it's a sales pitch, but you shouldn't try and sell to people who don't quite get it. We're very lucky that people are coming to us and asking, how can you apply this blockchain to our business, our service, our solution? And those are the guys that we spend a lot of time with, and we don't really try and knock on the doors of people who aren't listening.
I like that approach. I've noticed Zilliqa over the years, before I was ever paying attention, maybe even before you got there, always had this philosophy of, we're not going to try to convince a lot of people that blockchain, forget Zilliqa for a moment, that blockchain is the right answer. Because, and you can hear interviews from years ago where folks are talking about, because it may not be the right solution, right? We don't just want to put everything on the blockchain to put everything on the blockchain. Do you meet the requirements of a blockchain benefiting you? And if so, then come along for the ride. Is that still the pervasive culture at Zilliqa, where, look, a blockchain is a blockchain, a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet, and a database is a database? Pick which one. Well, let's figure out which one you need. Is that still the overarching idea?
Yeah, we're blessed that we can actually build services which we think people will like and use and adopt, like Social Pay, which had dramatic impact on Twitter and on the community, and has been repurposed now for enterprise level marketing. We're quite excited about that. Obviously, Social Pay 2 has been talked about for a while, but it's in there ready to roll. And when the businesses can use it for their day-to-day digital marketing, then that becomes less of a barrier, less of a thought process. They don't even need to know that it's on the blockchain.
Right.
They're just using an interface, they're marketing, and they're suddenly getting huge volumes because people are being rewarded or incentivized in the way we truly believe that humanity should go forward. That's for good behavior, you get a reward, period.
I wonder if that's one of the disconnects between enterprise adoption and token holders or traders, is the idea that in business, you don't particularly care if anybody knows what you're using behind the scenes. I don't care if somebody knows whether I'm using a DB2 or Microsoft SQL Server. And in blockchain, to some degree, it's the same way. I don't care if somebody knows if I'm on Ethereum or on Zilliqa or on both. Have we hit a point to where there's a disconnect or conflicting pressures? Because I know I'm feeling it, but I think I'm probably early on this, that as somebody who has crypto holdings, I would love to see the market caps rise, which rises the token price. At the same time, as somebody who wants to transact business, I do not want that token price to rise. I want especially for a network, I know this was by design, I know everything's open in the future, but especially for a network like Zilliqa, where the gas, quote unquote, is paid for with the utility token, right? There's no separation. So in a network like that, if we start talking, you go online, and I'm in these conversations too, but when you start talking 25 cent relative to where we are in about 13, 50 cent, $1, $2 plus Zilliqa, all of a sudden the transaction cost goes up, and we end up in a smaller version of what Ethereum's doing. They're blaming the miners right now. Well, I'm an Ethereum miner, and I can tell you, I don't make any more than I did before in Ether. I make the same amount of ether. They've just pamped the price so high that now I'm the enemy for selling GPU time. What can you speak to that particular concern? And I know I'm going to lose a lot of people here because not many people care. You're on one side or the other. But for those who are floating market dynamics between the two, this tokenization idea and tokenomics, help me here. And I really mean that. Help me here because I'm lost in a giant sea of I don't know how to make sense of what I just said.
Yeah, we have quite an in-depth discussion on this. It's in play on Telegram for those people who want to join the group and see where the logic is going. This is genuinely an important topic and one which actually the community themselves, we think, should be able to vote on as to whether to set a limit on certain transactions. And this is where we have our GZIL and our governance portal, and we can put together a proposal to help manage that potential challenging cost increase in the overall token price, affecting the utility and the gas payments that need to be made for smart contracts and straight transactions. So that is definitely in play. It's something which is being talked through. We are trying very hard to open it up to the community so the community gets to vote on it. So that's something which I think will come up in the next few weeks or so.
Thanks for sharing that, because I don't know if a lot of crypto holders, because when we look at crypto investments, at least the data I see, we tend to have a lot of younger crypto only investors. They may not even be in stocks. They may not be anywhere, in bonds. They may not have a traditional 401k even. And that's fine. But we have to look at, this idea of we want corporate adoption. We want enterprise adoption. We want it because it's going to drive the price up. But we also have to face that other side that if you get what you want, those businesses coming in do not want the price to go up. And they have significantly more capital to, I won't say, right, I don't mean manipulate to adjust to position the pricing where it's more advantageous to them. Is there any protection in place for GZIL in particular? We saw a couple of the, I don't quite understand the voting process, to be blunt. So what people were calling fake votes, they weren't really doing anything. They weren't compliant with the voting standard. But we saw what happened in a couple of recent votes where whales came in and went against what mostly the community was wanting. And just all of a sudden you went from a no vote to a yes vote like that by a major margin, by something like 70-30. Are there protections in place? Are we, running any type of scenarios that protect individual token holders as opposed to those who can, quite frankly, pull a Tesla and go in and buy $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's another one that's in discussion, how to manage whale voting, building in logic which can help. It's not proportionate as such, but trying to put together something or a strategy to avoid that kind of situation in future. So definitely under discussion back at HQ.
Is there anywhere we're leaning? Because my mind starts going to SEC problems here in the US, other regulatory problems in the EU and Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, the specific proposals that are put forward at the moment are not, they're kind of early days test proposals, just trying to feel out the system and get governance working. So it's okay for now, but I think we've realized that it does need to be looked at. And so Han Wen and the team there are working through the logic, how to help manage the voting. So he's a good guy to get on the show, of course, to discuss that in detail. But definitely it's a key part of how we manage governance.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So as we start working towards the conclusion here, I like to do a couple of things fairly routinely. And one, I like to ask, what did I forget?
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of feedback from the community about comparing us with other projects. And that, of course, is something we do. We can do that on the gas cost level and the smart contract pricing level and so on and so forth, the rudimentary logistics. But we also are compared with, for example, a company that raised more than $1 billion from their original token ICO, and they have something like 250 staff. So you would imagine that they should be able to deliver a lot more action, activity, output than Zilliqa, which has 30 staff and raised $20 million 3 years ago. So it's quite difficult. People say, well, just hire more people, more staff. But we actually are running a business and we're trying to be relatively conservative and have a runway which is sensible. We're now in a much better position because of the token price. So of course we can invest more heavily in 2021. So I'm really bullish about what we're going to do this year. But the straight up comparisons really drive me nuts.
Well, investors, thank you for that, because the runway is important. When I mentioned before some of the votes that came through, was one of them was about the community hiring developers and injecting them into the Zilliqa team. And I mean, like when that vote switched to yes, I think anyone who follows me on Twitter didn't need me to tweet. They could feel my head rupturing from right here in Central Florida. Has there been a discussion on how to adopt governance, adopt decentralization, but still retain protections while, quite frankly, the legal entity, the company, Zilliqa Research, still needs protections, cannot flip over overnight to be a DAO? What's the conversation like for handling that business to business?
We have multiple layers, I suppose, of interaction and self-defense. In terms of what we are doing, we have to be selective with the resources that we currently support. We also have Zilliqa, which is its own community, which can help also develop developers and projects and put hands to work on other things. So we have ways of trying to adapt to the workload and try and develop into areas which people think are a priority. So we're not too disconnected from the feedback, and we are trying to put the resources in. Now we have quite an aggressive campaign to developers into ZilSwap and really build out that platform dramatically this year. We're quite excited about where that's going to go. So we may be a little bit slower to respond, but we absolutely are picking the priorities and backing them with staff when we can. And now we have a bit more leeway to bring the staff in. Do I take any of it personally? Do I think we have a vote of no confidence in the business? I'm not sure I would kind of characterize it like that. I'm open to all feedback, constructive criticism also. I just feel that we do have our own mandate. We do have our own plans. We do have our own roadmap, and we will try and absorb what the community thinks as often as possible. But sometimes we just can't really change what we've already committed to.
Yeah, and to clarify, just for my own record, I don't think that anybody ever intended it as a vote of no confidence. What I mean to say is that the community, some members of the community, attempted to help and problem solve in a way, and I love that. But the way that was chosen in one very hopefully isolated incident was what other businesses use as a vote of no confidence, right? If we were shareholders instead of utility token holders, and there was a vote at the annual meeting to do that, that's what I mean. So I'm using language from a different asset class, bringing it in. Colin, I know you're right there with me, but I did want to point it out as clarity that, if somebody is a utility token holder and thinking, well, let me be helpful, let's be helpful, right? Let's be helpful. Let's not turn it into a shareholder meeting where we say let's go ahead and that would in the stock world would be a shareholder vote of no confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something we can really alter. If someone wishes to put forward their own proposal, that's kind of democratic capitalism, as we like to call it. And that's fair enough. You can put forward a proposal, and if everyone backs you, then we have to listen. But is it going to fundamentally change what the Zilliqa Research company does? At this point, it's not linked categorically. So, we have to say this is a proving process, trying to understand how we might move to that DAO structure, which is highly desirable in many, many ways. Do we create a foundation to accommodate these kind of inputs? Also possible. There are many different angles to push forward, but Zilliqa Research is actually quite commercial and focused on driving a lot of interactions with businesses. And yes, if someone voted for us to suddenly change our business plan, then that would be a little bit difficult.
Right. Well, Colin, again, let me put the question out there once again of what we should be ending with, just to transition back to it since I went on I went on a tangent there with my own thoughts. But any other closing thoughts that we should be looking at or thinking about as we look at Zilliqa's progress deeper into 2021?
Yeah, it's hard not to focus on the token price, and people have obviously noted in the last year it's risen quite dramatically. That's taken as a proof point of success and growth and adoption, and we appreciate that, of course. But there's so much more to do. We're in so many different areas of activity. I've never been more excited in any kind of business situation than I am each day that I'm working at Zilliqa, because the nature of the projects are so phenomenally groundbreaking that you can literally barely contain your excitement when you think how they will land. And it's painful not to be able to tell you every single thing that I'm working on with every single company that we're working with. But I can safely say that I'm working on some of the biggest deals I've ever done in my entire career as an entrepreneur. And it's only going to get better and bigger. The momentum is incredible. We're getting calls from obviously celebrities, music stars, sports teams. Everything is just on the table. And whilst we think about the ways to apply tokenization to everything, we also get brought into we've got 3 different gold projects on at the moment simultaneously. So I can't sort of talk about every single thing we're doing, but there are tons of things that we're working on, which will absolutely take us to another level in the next couple of months. So yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you. And you deserve congratulations, because when somebody says you're working on the biggest deals you've worked on, when they have a resume, a LinkedIn profile, a background such as yours reads, internet marketing, mobile marketing, digital marketing, community building, community advising, that's a big deal. And I think people should pay attention to it. So if a business is interested, and their idea is formulating in their mind, their curiosity's piqued, they want to send out that RFI to you, what course of action should they take? Well, in previous episodes, we've talked about there's Zillocracy and Zillhive. What's the type of business that should be saying, that's nice, I need to reach directly out to Colin right now?
Yeah, it's my email, colin@zilliqa.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Colin, so much for being here today. We'll go ahead and sign off. And again, just thank you so much. There's just so much interest in the Zilliqa community. Sometimes it feels like we're this tiny little community, but think about this. Our YouTube channel has been out for just about a week at this point, and we're now a channel of over 300 people strong. The optics surrounding Zilliqa's size may be a bit deceiving, as if even some who don't have a Zilliqa wallet address may have their eyes on this space. My guess is that Zilliqa will probably be ramping up the announcements soon. Between the social media hints and the feeling I get when I speak directly to members of the Zilliqa team, there is a lot going on behind the scenes, and I mean a lot. I don't know specifics, I don't have inside information, but what I do know specifics about is that there's a lot going on here with the Zilliqa Observer. We have more podcast episodes and YouTube videos coming, especially on liquidity mining and yield farming, as the information available out there is, well, it's non-existent right now. Despite some great YouTube videos and some other content out there, there's not really a lot about the dynamics of how it works. And even reverse engineering it, I'm having some trouble figuring things out. But starting with our next podcast episode, I want to let you know this. We'll be running a merchandise giveaway sponsored by Zilliqa itself. So stay tuned for your chance to win some awesome Zilliqa swag. Until next time, I'm Chase Raz. Take care.